It's true that RPGs on the Nintendo Wii weren't all that common, or at least not as prevalent as the Just Dance games. When the Wii stopped getting jiggy with it, did you notice that the planet fell off its axis for a bit? Nevertheless, basically every system has its role-playing gems, and the Wii ultimately got enough great RPGs to justify the system to RPG fans. It's not a stretch to say that some of the entries on our list of the best Wii RPGs even today, though niche, are some of the greatest of all time. Tales of Symphonia Dawn of the New World is set 2 years after its predecessor ended with two worlds merging together. Is it a new world if it's two worlds becoming one world? Surely that's a net loss on worlds, right? Regardless, here new characters Emil and Marta take centre stage as the former seeks answers and revenge for the deaths of his parents, seemingly at the hands of Symphonia's hero, Lloyd Irving. Like Tales of the Abyss's Luke before him, Emil starts off as an insufferable protagonist, albeit due to an extreme lack of confidence rather than an overabundance of it. While his development doesn't quite reach the same heights as Luke's, Emil still manages to see some interesting character growth by the end of his journey, helped along by Johnny Yong Bosch's performance for his two split personalities. Dawn of the New World retains the action RPG combat that defines Tales, with its own quirks befitting its nature as a spin-off. For instance, the world map is a menu now instead of a fully explorable world, and Emil and Marta spend most of the game fighting alongside recruitable monsters instead of human allies. Modern mechanics like free run make combat smoother and more accessible, and characters' abilities are more conducive to flashy combos than in the original Symphonia. Yes, granted, it's not for everyone, but despite its divisive reception, Tales of Symphonia Dawn of the New World is still a great streamlined follow-up with an engaging plot. It meaningfully explores the consequences of its predecessor's ending in ways that a lot of spin-offs and RPGs in general don't, and features stronger character development than most give it credit for. Let's make like Gustav and focus on those entries that come after this one. Nailed it. By 2009, Final Fantasy had already dabbled a bit in the idea of direct sequels to some of its mainline entries, with the likes of Final Fantasy X-2, Final Fantasy XII Revenant Wings, and the burgeoning compilation of Final Fantasy VII. Square Enix continued to experiment with this approach, and beginning in the summer of 2009, Wii owners were treated to a direct sequel to Final Fantasy IV. Final Fantasy IV, the After Years, is set 17 after years, its predecessor, and sees its cast coming back together along with some fresh faces to tackle a new threat to the world after the planet's second moon reappears. While relatively predictable and a bit rote in how it uses typical Final Fantasy tropes, the story still manages to be a fun time, especially if you're a fan of the original Final Fantasy IV. The ATB turn-based battle system returned from that original game with the addition of bands, which are combo attacks which are essentially this game's take on Chrono Trigger's double and triple techs. More games taking inspiration from Chrono Trigger can't be too bad a thing, right? What made the After Years stand out from some of Square's other direct sequels was in how it was handled, as it was originally a digital-only episodic release for the Wii Shop channel. That storefront sadly is long gone, as is that specific version of 4's follow-up. It thankfully remains playable on PSP as part of Final Fantasy IV The Complete Collection, and on Steam, where it received a full 3D remake in the same style as Final Fantasy IV's DS version. Glad we decided to open that box of tricks again. This niche Wii exclusive once had the spotlight thanks to Operation Rainfall. If you don't remember it, it was a massive fan campaign that attempted and ultimately succeeded to drum up attention and support for English localizations of this game, as well as two games we will chat about soon. Unlike the other two Rainfall games, Pandora's Tower is an action RPG with a bigger emphasis on puzzle solving and dungeon crawling, while blending a variety of other elements to create something wholly unique. The game's premise is simple. Elena, the lover of protagonist Aeron, is afflicted with a curse that will slowly transform her into a monster. To stave off and eventually permanently destroy this curse, Aeron must travel the 13 towers and feed Elena the flesh of the beasts he slays within. This gives Pandora's Tower a pretty fresh blend from dungeon crawling and puzzle solving to relationship building tied with time management. Elena's transformation progresses over time as Aeron explores the tower. Feeding her beast flesh, as well as having conversations and giving her gifts, will help her maintain her humanity. Just like my wife, oi oi. Each of the dungeons are also punctuated by boss fights that require really creative use of Aeron's Arachlos chain to bring down. While not a perfect game, Pandora's Tower has mostly been forgotten in this day and age, and that's a shame. You'll ruin the day you overlook this one. Beginning in 2006, those who wanted a bit more fantasy action in their farming sims were introduced to Rune Factory, a series that was a spin-off of Marvelous Entertainment's Story of Seasons when it was still named Harvest Moon, and that's all I'm getting into with that. Rune Factory maintains the core that defines Story of Seasons, being centered around growing crops and nurturing relationships with your fellow townsfolk. All that fun, chill stuff. The other half of the equation is a fantastical setting involving things like monsters, dragons, empires, and even deities. Far from being simple farmers, the amnesiac leads of each entry often end up playing a pivotal role in the events of their world through dungeon crawling and action RPG combat. Rune Factory usually introduces new settings and characters with each entry. The series debut on the Wii, however, is a direct follow-up to the very first Rune Factory title on the Nintendo DS. Sometime after thwarting the Sex Empire's invasion of Cardia Village, bloody prudes, protagonist Raguna moves to a new town, following after friend and potential love interest Mist as she senses someone calling to her in her dreams. Rune Factory Frontier makes a pretty good impression as a solid and incredibly deep fantasy farming sim with a well-written story and vibrant art style. Beyond the usual time management mechanics, players will have to watch out for things like proper ecosystem management too. It's a lot of managing, but it never stops managing to be fun. Though written as a direct sequel to the original Rune Factory, new players can jump into Frontier without too much issue at all. Stardew Valley didn't just get its ideas from the sky, or the ground. Right, let's change the story. The second Operation Rainfall RPG I'll chat about today has quite the credentials behind it, being directed by none other than Hironobu Sakaguchi, the father of Final Fantasy and later founder of Mistwalker Corporation. Longtime Final Fantasy composer Nobuo Uematsu is also along for the ride after having also worked on Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey. Set on Lazulis Island, the lore story tells a tale of mercenaries trying to survive amidst a crisis of environmental decay and ongoing war. Fun stuff. Amidst this, protagonist Zale discovers a mysterious power known as the Outsider and nurtures a budding romance with Callista, daughter of Lazulis Island's ruler Count Argonon. Despite the overt fantasy elements, the lore story is one of the Wii's more grounded JRPGs, relying more heavily on character drama over mind-blowing plot twists. Unlike Sakaguchi's past work on Blue Dragon and Lost Odyssey, the lore story is an action RPG with a tactical spin. Zale can issue orders to allies, commanding them to do things like use and position AoE spells in specific spots to even beginning fights with sneak attacks that disrupt or destroy parts of the environment. Beyond a standard set of attacks, Zale can do things like take cover, diffuse allied spells for extra effects, and use the power of the Outsider to draw aggro and keep enemies' attention. Thanks to its action-packed yet highly tactical combat, a character-driven story, lively English voice acting, and emotional soundtrack by Uematsu, the lore story earned the attention and acclaim it got in its heyday. It's a Wii classic that honestly deserves a remaster on newer systems, especially to revive its surprisingly robust multiplayer mode that had a cult following in its time. It makes me very sad that we've not seen it since. That's the most full segue of all time. Vanillaware is a name that's been popping up more and more over the last few years, but before much wider success, they gave Wii owners the gorgeous Muramasa, the Demon Blade. This little beauty is set in Edo period Japan and revolves around the titular cursed weapons that crave blood and have summoned demons due to the chaos across the land. The game features two main protagonists, each with their own story campaign and set of endings. As with Vanillaware's other works, Muramasa is absolutely stunning to behold, with a colourful 2D art style influenced by Japanese woodblock prints. It's easily one of the Wii's best looking games and still holds up really well today. Pair it with a fast and frenetic combat system that iterates on Odin's Sphere and you already have a recipe for success. The story does suffer slightly due to a bit of a bland localization, but it's otherwise a solid experience with great replay value thanks to its multiple endings. A Vita remaster, which also bangs, updated the localization and featured new DLC episodes, but the Wii version can be found for lower prices online nowadays, something to consider for those looking for more Vanillaware goodness. It is pretty fire. The final mainline Fire Emblem title until 2019's Three Houses was a follow-up to the fan-favourite Path of Radiance. Though it's a direct sequel set 3 years after the GameCube classic, Radiant Dawn opts to take a radically different approach to its storytelling structure. While past entries have experimented with multiple different campaigns, Radiant Dawn instead features one massive story split into 4 parts, each shown from the perspective of different groups. This means your group of playable characters rotates regularly throughout the game. Though Radiant Dawn does make some additions to the Fire Emblem formula, like statistical advantage from elevation, it's known mainly for its uncompromising difficulty. As with Path of Radiance before it, Radiant Dawn presents a rich world with a morally complex plot that stands out compared to prior and later entries, further elevated here by the constantly shifting perspectives and culminating in an absolutely grand finale. Despite the pretty positive reception from fans and critics alike for both Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn, this entry in particular sold very poorly, and Fire Emblem as a series would reach the brink of death until Awakening came around. Given the high prices the game goes for now online, a remaster of the Tellius duology would mean more fans could experience the high notes of Fire Emblem. Don't even try and tell Nintendo that though. Originally conceived as a PS3 title, Monster Hunter Tri marked the series' debut on Nintendo consoles. As with the rest of the series, Monster Hunter Tri is all about hunting monsters, using their body parts to craft better gear, and then gazing yourself in your reflection and discovering that it is you who has become the monster. Sorry, I actually meant make more cool helmets. Cool helmets. And just like prior and later titles, combat in Monster Hunter Tri is a test of patience and observation. Monster attacks have tails that must be learned to properly dodge, and rather than use conventional health bars, monsters on the verge of death show it in their body language instead, sometimes even fleeing to other areas to recuperate when pushed to their limit. Monster Hunter Tri also took things to another level by introducing underwater exploration and combat. More crucially, this one streamlined mechanics to make the series more accessible to newcomers and paved the way to eventually allow the series to virtually explode in popularity with Monster Hunter World. Online co-op was a major part of this game as well, though that has sadly been shut down of course. As with Capcom's other games, Monster Hunter Tri did eventually receive re-releases on the 3DS and Wii U in the form of Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, which added new monsters and quests and loads more, but it's hard to ignore the legacy that the original Monster Hunter Tri left behind, making it one of the Wii's best titles regardless of genre. It is just super good. Super Paper Mario begins with an ancient prophecy. If Bowser and Princess Peach were ever to wed, a powerful artifact known as the Chaos Heart would appear. In a bid to remake the world, new antagonist Count Bleck kidnaps the pair and tries to force their marriage. It is a goofy premise, but Super Paper Mario is a surprisingly dark game, weaving a tale of tragic love and loss, and among its well-written cast are some of the vilest and most dangerous villains in the series, if not Mario history. Super Paper Mario's story still holds up well, and is arguably tied with the 1000-Year Door for one of the best stories in a Mario RPG. Where this game really shakes things up is in its gameplay, which can best be described as a blend between platformer and RPG with the elements you'd expect from both. Unique to this entry is the ability for Mario to flip into 3D, revealing secrets in the environment you wouldn't be able to see or interact with otherwise. With the vibrant visuals you'd expect from the series and a new art style that relies heavily on shapes and angularity, which is a fun word to say, Super Paper Mario stands out on the Wii for its presentation. When combined with its darker story and pretty good action RPG, this entry stands out as the most unorthodox Paper Mario game and one well worth your time. However, it is also a little bit underrated, you'd have to say. People don't talk about this one as much as they should, but the best RPG on Wii is, of course, of the 3 games championed by Operation Rainfall, which of course also includes The Last Story and Pandora's Tower, Xenoblade Chronicles is undoubtedly the biggest and most pivotal to the genre, having arrived in an era where JRPGs were stagnating a tad, but especially in the mainstream. It brought an innovative battle system and an utterly engrossing plot that turned the concept of destiny on its head. Where this game excels is in its melding together of story and gameplay. Its setting of 2 massive titans makes for unusual and incredible vistas few other games have achieved, and its semi-open world makes exploration more of a joy here than it is in any other JRPG released in the early 2010s. The battle system is real-time and akin to MMOs, where characters use basic attacks automatically and can use various arts that recharge over time. Shulk's ability to see glimpses of the future in the story is brilliantly integrated, manifesting as occasional visions of incoming powerful attacks. Not only does Shulk's Monado come with a huge variety of tools to change the future, but party members can also warn each other of the impending attack, letting the player strategically use one of their arts to counter it. Xenoblade Chronicles as a package is an incredible experience, experience, and in some ways was way ahead of its time, with numerous quality of life inclusions like fast travel and regenerating health that many other games in the genre were still slow and clunky at implementing. Combined with the stellar dub and incredible music, it makes for not only the best Wii RPG, but one of the greatest RPGs of all time. If you are going to play any RPG on the Wii, let it be this one.